Alright guys, I'm back with another video. I'm trying to make this one quick, but we will see. Actually I'm trying to make this video since yesterday, but I just felt like it was kind of fell short of what I want to kind of drove home. And I find myself ramble on way too much, so that's not my intention at all, because I want to get straight to the point here. Now, by now, you probably heard about 3 different banks going under, right? We just heard about today, the Signature Bank. On Friday, we heard about SBV. Of course, that was a shakeup because, it's kind of like VC backed, and, it's backing so many startup companies out there. That has to do with, accredited investor and all that stuff. And of course, people like that will get bailed out, as I expected to happen. However, the Silvergate was not too lucky to have that type of backstop. To me, it feels to me that they're trying to target, crypto in general to be the full brunt of this, and of course they will do their best to help their friends out, which is, it's always the top 1%, right? And I get it, they are trying to kind of backstop this from being widespread into the bigger bank out there, right? Now, with that whole ramble there, I want to bring this point home, and let me play you this clip right here. And I'm sure you've heard of this a million times already if you've in this play before and know a lot about the banking system, right? This was, as you see, European Parliament, and it was about 13 years ago. I mean, sorry, about 10 years ago. So let's listen in.
EFT, Mr. Bloom has 2 minutes.
Commissioner, Mr. President, I rise again, I'm afraid, to make the same old hoary speech that I've been making here for several years, and that is, it is my opinion that you do not really understand the concept of banking. All the banks are broke. Bank Santander, Deutsche Bank, Royal Bank of Scotland, they're all broke. And why are they broke? It isn't an act of God. It isn't some sort of tsunami. They're broke because we have a system called fractional reserve banking, which means that banks can lend money that they don't actually have. It's a criminal scandal, and it's been going on for too long. To add to that problem, you have moral hazard, a very significant moral hazard from the political sphere. And most of the problem starts in politics and central banks, which are part of the same political system. We have counterfeiting, sometimes called quantitative easing, but counterfeiting by any other name. The artificial printing of money, which if any ordinary person did, they'd go to prison for a very long time. And yet governments and central banks do it all the time. Central banks repress the amount of interest that rates are, so we don't have the real cost of money. And yet we blame the real retail banks for manipulating LIBOR. The sheer effrontery of this is quite astonishing. It's central banks that manipulate interest rates, Commissioner. And plus, underneath all this, we talk loosely, in a rather cavalier fashion, do we not, about deposit guarantees. So when banks go broke through their own incompetence and chicanery, the taxpayer picks up the tab. It's theft from the taxpayer. And until we start sending bankers, and I include central bankers and politicians, to prison for this outrage, it will continue.
Alright, so yes, it turns out that he was right. But this problem has a very simple solution. And you have to go back to the Franklin Roosevelt time, to solve this problem. And why is that? Now, there used to be an act called, as you can see here, Glass-Steagall. I might be pronouncing this wrong, but I've heard Glass-Eagle for some reason. But this is how it's spelled, Glass-Steagall. Now there were senator, right? There's two senator that makes this happen. His name is, I guess his last name is Glass, and then the other one is Siegel. So they come up with this act, and of course it's enacted by Franklin D. Roosevelt here back in this 1933. This is after the aftermath of the Great Depression, right? And ever since then, we've never had bank failure until 2000, the dot-com bubble. So a year before that, this particular act was repealed. Okay, so they were repealed back in 1999. Now, let me try to explain it to you what this is do for the banking system, right? So it used to be that we have two different type of banking, right, during that time. So there is a bank that is called commercial bank that is, deal with depositor money and all that stuff. Commercial bank, sorry. Right, and then you have an investment banking, right? Now, these two never come in contact from each other. They operate independently. Okay, so A and B, right? It doesn't match. It doesn't relate to each other. Now, as a regular person who have money, who want to save money, who have a saving account or whatever, as a regular person with small amount of money, right? Whether it's hundred, tens of dollars, or $1,000, right? You want to deposit to a commercial bank, right? Now, these banks are not allowed to use your money other than the purpose of servicing this, right? Serving your customer, and perhaps lend it out in a small amount. Obviously, that makes sense, right? That does not put these people at risk. Okay, so it's local loan, small loan here and there, right? For the local, business owner. Small loans. So they could do that, but they are supposed to maintain the majority, okay, the majority of money in the bank, so that if your customer, like the majority of them, wants your money back, you would have them available for them, right? For these people, okay, that comes to your bank. Okay, now if you want to invest in something, right, whether it's stocks, bonds, to try to grow your money in the capitalism world, then you could do so, but you just have to make an account with another bank that is called investment banking. Now, usually these are, other commodity too. So with the commodity, with the bonds or stocks or whatever you want to buy, you would have to, open up the investment banking account with the investment bank, right? So typically you have to have, a substantial amount of money for you to do this. So this is usually reserved for rich people, right? People have money to invest back then. Now, if these people go bust for whatever reason, the stock goes down, the bond didn't do as well as they thought it was, the commodity went bust because of whatever, gold, they think it goes up, but it went down, whatever. If they go bust, go under, then, this would not spread to the mom and pop out there that, or the rich people who have money who just want to sit tight with it. This would not happen, right? Or kind of spread the fear to this. The bank would not go bust. Only the investment bank that engage in the risky bet. And guess what? Whoever invests in that vehicle would have to take a loss. The government would not have to insure them at all, right? Because again, they under the risk, or understand the risk of putting money in the investment bank, right? While depositor money could sit tight. This is why we did not have any major banking issue until this law was repealed. So the simple solution is right in front of us. But, those people who up top, they don't want this because they don't make enough money for themselves, right? They want to be able to have this deposited money. And this is really the greed of the executive bankers, the executive branch, just like the gentleman was saying, the moral hazard between the central bank and the politicians. They are self-serving by nature. So, of course, they're not going to, enact this because they don't make that much money. Not using other people's money to make more money, right? And what do I mean by that? So the current system that we have today, real quick though, before I end this video, because it's getting too long already. Now, instead of having two different separate banks with two different sets of leadership, currently, because this rule is no longer there, or this law is no longer there, banks are now able to operate as both. Okay? So under the same bank, right? Now, of course, this bank could technically use their money to buy any things at all. Now, as long as they maintain a certain reserve, whatever, this is what the gentleman was saying, fractional reserve banking, right? Now, not only that these people will, so for every $100 that you deposit, the bank is supposed to be holding only $10. That's by law, right? Of course, since the pandemic, they even take that out too. So the bank didn't have to hold any amount of money at all. So that introduced a risk because they would go ahead to try to make as much money as they can. They will take your $100 and lend it out to local, now think about $100, not just $100, right? Think this is like trillions of dollars, right? Of course, or billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars. They would take your deposit money and do the local lend, small loan for business, and big loans for big business. And then they could take a portion of that and put into bonds because they think it's a higher yield and whatever, the safest thing in the world, right? And as we all know, bonds is not privy to risk, right? There's some risk in there, but U.S. Treasury bond is traditionally, being seen as the most prestigious, asset in the book. So what they would do is they would just load it up on bonds, right? And it seems like it is what happened in the SVB, right? They make that decision. A whole bunch of bonds is not, mature yet, so they would have to wait for those funds. But since people were panicking or whatever reason, they want their money back. The bank didn't have the money at the time because it's all tied up in illiquid asset. Okay, so that's what happened there. And but the point is that if they separate these two, like, again, there's a reason why this act works so effectively, because if the bank was not allowed to take your money, the depositor money, to buy bonds or do anything with it, this would not happen at all, right? But because it's under the same bank, and they do this all the time, and some bank even over leverage themselves. So with mortgage, right, they could just write it on their book saying that you owe them something, but it's just credit, right? It's not like they have the actual money to give it to you. It's just by the fact that they have some asset and they could leverage it out. problem with the current one is the fact that, you know, the banking system are mixed and matched, and they are able to do this, right? To the depositor money. And on top of that, just like what happened, the government guarantee this. So what does it say to you? It says to these bankers like, oh, we don't have to worry about risk management. We could just take as many risks as we want, because if anything go wrong with the depositor money, the government would have to step in, right? And this is the moral hazard that the gentleman was talking about. That there's no accountability for this type of action for these executive. Okay? So again, we've got to start to jail these people or enact this law back. Bring this act back. All right, guys. So that's all I have for this one. I don't want to kind of waste people's time rambling on and on here. Of course, you understand. Hopefully, you understand a little bit more about the banking system that we have right now. And the solution is so simple. We'll see if these people are actually going to wake up and take a look at in the mirror that they're not a genius after all. They are flawed. And the system that we're been told time and time again that we have a robust economy and that we have a robust banking system is all a lie. Have a nice day. Be careful for this week. Be on the lookout. I'm excited for GME earnings still though, even through the face of this. Now, if next week, trading week, GME goes down even further, just be prepared for that. And just know that it's all about panicking here, right? It's pure panic at this point because the banking system is mistrust there, right? And the big banks, the bigger you are, the harder you have to fall. Think about that. All right, guys, that's all I have. Okay, have a nice day.